Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal Party retains power in the country's election, but falls short of a majority. The party is leading with 167 seats, just short of the 172 needed, but ahead of the Conservatives' 145. At least 13 people killed in clashes between Druze fighters and pro-government forces near Syria's capital Damascus, sparked by a leaked recording allegedly insulting Prophet Muhammad. A restaurant fire in northeastern China kills at least 22 and injures at least 3 others. President Xi Jinping vows a swift investigation and accountability under the law. A car crashes into an after-school camp in the US state of Illinois, killing at least 4, including children. The driver is taken to a hospital for evaluation. An investigation is on to find the motive for the crash. And a major wildfire sweeps through South Africa's Cape Town, forcing the evacuation of nearly 200 households, including residents needing special care. Hello and welcome. We start with a conflict that is not from Africa. The United States is carrying out strikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The rebels have been targeting shipping routes in protest of Israel's war in Gaza. Africa is not involved in this conflict. Yet, Africans have been caught in the crossfire. Yesterday, a strike hit a migrant center in Yemen's Saada governorate. This region is a stronghold of Houthi rebels. The rebels blame the United States for the attack. The US has been targeting rebel-held areas for weeks. It claims over 800 targets struck in 6 weeks, killing hundreds of Houthi leaders. But one of the deadliest strikes happened yesterday. It was on the migrant center. At least 68 were killed, nearly 50 others injured. All were Africans. The facility housed over 100 undocumented migrants. Most were from Ethiopia and Somalia. They were on their way to Gulf countries in search of work. Videos show the horrific aftermath of the strike. The center was reduced to rubble. Bodies seen covered in dust, blood-stained debris scattered everywhere.
There was a TV screen on which we watched the news about airstrikes in Sanaa and other places. So we learned this news from the screen, and then we went to sleep. At 4 a.m., the airstrikes hit while we were sleeping, and the whole place turned into a blaze of fire. There was screaming, groaning, and crying from everyone. The strike hit us while we were sleeping. That's it. The airstrike hit us while we were sleeping. Everyone was asleep.
The United States has responded. Officials say they are aware of the civilian casualties. They are investigating the incident. Meanwhile, reactions are pouring in. The United Nations says it is deeply alarmed. It is urging all parties to protect civilians. Meanwhile, Iran has accused the United States of war crimes. But a bigger question looms. Why were African migrants in war-torn Yemen? Every year, tens of thousands cross the Red Sea from the Horn of Africa. They flee war, drought, and poverty. They hope to reach Saudi Arabia and the Gulf for work. But first, they must cross Yemen, a country itself facing years of conflict. The journey is dangerous, but many still embark on it. As per reports, several fall victim to human traffickers and abusers. They are often detained by militias, including the Houthis. Some are forced into labor, extorted, or even recruited to fight. As per the International Migration Organization, last year at least 40,000 migrants arrived in Yemen. Most were from Ethiopia and Somalia. Both countries face internal chaos. Ethiopia is battling years of conflict in Tigray, Oromia, and Amhara. Thousands have been killed and millions have been displaced. Somalia is fighting al-Shabaab terrorists. Poverty is widespread. Food insecurity and unemployment push people to flee. So instead of staying in crisis, they risk their lives through another war zone, all for a glimpse of hope. But the truth is, they have been failed by the people who they chose to protect them, failed by a world they hoped would welcome them. To discuss this further, we have with us Boitumelo Ben Sonokuane, Associate Professor at UNISA, and a political commentator who is joining us live from Pretoria, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon.
Now, what evidence exists to support or refute the Houthi rebels' claims that a US airstrike specifically targeted this place holding the African migrants? And how does this fit into the broader pattern of US military engagement in Yemen?
Look, we first have to agree that it seems that in the global politics, Black lives matters not, and it will not even be a shock or a surprise that Black life is terminated, it's ended in the fashion that we've been experiencing in Yemen. And as a matter of fact, the U.S. Military Central Command, known as CENTCOM, that is responsible for military operations in the Middle East, of course, have refused to give details of their operations and the latest strikes that have happened. But they have confirmed that there has been strikes that have been happening as, even around March, or about or around 800 that have attacked the specific locations. And so it is nothing that is new, it is not denied, it's just the tricky details or the devils of are in the details. So we are yet to get, there's no denial from the US in general.
Right. And Professor, given that many African migrants, especially Ethiopians and Somalians, risk the dangerous journey through Yemen to reach Saudi Arabia, how might this incident affect regional migration patterns, and what humanitarian implications could arise from this increased instability?
Look, we will know, as you have explained yourself, that Yemen is critical for migrants to cross to Saudi Arabia for better life, economic exposure, so that they are able to fend for themselves and their family. That is central in what you are. But once they find themselves trapped, as for example, those who are not documented find themselves trapped inside Yemen and not being able to go to Saudi Arabia. At the same time, there is a new problem that is created. They can't even go back home because they left home more or less without following the necessary legal processes. Therefore, they find themselves trapped in Yemen as homeless people, unemployed. Therefore, they find themselves exploited and abused by those who are there. So they become homeless people, unemployed, with no source of income within the boundaries or the borders of Yemen.
And what are the potential international legal and diplomatic repercussions for the United States if the investigations confirm that the airstrike hit a civilian detention center? And how might this impact U.S. relations with both Yemen's factions and African nations like Ethiopia?
Look, we must all agree that the reputation of the USA and its current leaders has been damaged, not only over the issue of Yemen, but in the globe in its totality. There is that reputation for the country, but also for its leaders. That's the first repercussion that they are facing. The second one has to do with the diplomatic pressure that they will face. It might not be today, but futuristically, because one way or the other, there shall be that time when all leaders and nations will have to account. And it is a known factor that power shifts with time. Geopolitics, global politics have taught us that nothing seems to be very permanent. But one of the consequences that the US might face and its leaders, as much as they have been escaping accountability, but what is clear is that the lesson that has been seen via Israel and Palestine issue or matter, that eventually there was a court that was involved, and as a result, at least some justice has been served to that in that legal, narrow sense. I foresee that in future, of course, through the ICC or in the national courts or any other platforms, we might have to see Donald Trump or leaders in the USA or the USA itself suffering more or less the similar consequences. We are yet to see a nation that is strong or individuals that are strong that will open cases against USA and its leaders. And those are the avenues that are available. Right. We must not lose hope with what is happening. We must try all avenues.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of Africa caught in the crossfire, the continent has become a battleground for other global conflicts. Now, this includes a battle for influence, particularly between Russia and the West. New reports now show just how far these countries are willing to go to win. Leaked documents now reveal a shocking plot. Russian officials plan to send millions of expired COVID-19 vaccines to Africa. This was back in 2022 to counter the United States, which was donating free vaccines. The plot was reportedly led by Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund. He is now a key negotiator in Russia's talks with the US over the conflict in Ukraine. As per investigative reports, he urged the Russian Health Ministry to extend the shelf life of 6 million Sputnik Light doses by 2 months. The vaccines were to be shipped as humanitarian aid at the Russian-Africa Summit in October of 2022. Dmitriev argued that it would give Russia an edge over US vaccine suppliers. The plan has been uncovered through a classified information that was leaked to media by European intelligence sources. However, reports do not mention if the vaccines were actually delivered. But they do say the Russian official cited the provided scientific basis for changing expiry dates. As per experts, increasing shelf life should be strictly on a scientific basis. Russia has not commented on the report. Now, the documents highlight how important Africa was to Russia in 2022, at a time when Moscow faced global isolation over its invasion of Ukraine. Since then, Russia has pushed harder on soft power campaign in Africa, whether by state media broadcasts or diplomatic outreach, while building military ties simultaneously. Russian mercenaries are now active in several African nations after those countries cut ties with Western partners. Ukraine has also responded with a counter-strategy with diplomatic tours, food aid and military cooperation, trying to push back Russian influence. But countries like Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso accuse Ukraine of supporting separatists and terrorists, while Russia backs the government. So while wars rage far from home, they're being fought on African soil too. And once again, the continent is left to bear the fallout. Moving to southern Africa now, Namibia's newly elected government has been rocked by its first major political scandal. Just weeks after President Netembo Nandi-Ndaitwah took office as the country's first female head of state, now the country's agriculture minister, Albert Hengari, has been sacked after being accused of raping a 16-year-old girl 5 years ago. The 59-year-old was arrested over the weekend after police say that he tried to bribe the victim, now 21, to withdraw her complaint. Hengari, a former academic, appeared in a Windhoek magistrates court on Monday, where he was formally charged and denied bail. Authorities say that he poses a flight risk and could attempt to influence witnesses. He faces multiple charges including rape, kidnapping, assault, and obstruction of justice. He remains in custody awaiting his next court appearance, scheduled for the 3rd of June. The President's office announced Hengari's immediate dismissal, but did not mention the criminal allegations directly. He has also been reportedly removed from his seat in the National Assembly, a position that he held as a nominee of the ruling SWAPO party. Now, Hengari was a relatively recent political appointee, having only assumed the agriculture portfolio in March of this year. He was brought into the cabinet as part of President Nandi-Ndaitwah's reshuffle, aimed at injecting new leadership into key sectors. He denies all the charges levied against him. His arrest and sacking have sparked fierce criticism from opposition, with the Independent Patriots for Change calling it a profound failure of leadership. They question why Hengari was appointed, despite reports of a criminal investigation initiated as far back as November last year. The opposition also linked the case to Namibia's wider gender violence crisis, with over 4,800 cases reported last year in a country of just 3 million. This includes more than 1,300 reported rapes, raising alarm among human rights advocates and civil society. For President Nandi-Ndaitwah, who campaigned for gender equality and transparency, this scandal presents her first major test in office. Her cabinet had been hailed for its historic female representation, with 9 of 14 ministers being women, and a vice president who is also a woman. But now her administration faces questions about political judgment and vetting processes at the highest levels of government. And for our last story today, let's shift our focus to North Africa. Morocco has just hosted the foreign ministers of the 3 Sahel junta states, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, in Rabat. The ministers have endorsed an initiative that offers their countries access to global trade through Morocco's Atlantic ports, a strategic shift for these landlocked nations. They expressed their support for the plan during a meeting with Morocco's King Mohammed VI, and all 3 countries have recently exited the West African regional bloc ECOWAS after facing trade sanctions in the wake of military coups. Now they're looking for new economic pathways, and Rabat is offering one through the Atlantic. Morocco first announced the Atlantic Initiative back in November of 2023. It comes as the country looks to deepen its influence in the Sahel and reposition itself as a gateway between Africa and the West. This initiative reportedly includes a major infrastructure development in Dakar and a coastal city in Western Sahara. Now, this could become a key port for global trade for the Sahel countries. The proposed corridor would start in Dakhla and run through Mauritania and extend into Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso and potentially Chad. Initially, the focus is on upgrading roads and customs infrastructure, with plans for the future railway connections reportedly under discussion. Now, the initiative comes at a time when the Sahel states are seeking to reposition themselves in the global economy. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have turned away from Western influences and have pursued greater cooperation with Russia. Moreover, their ties with Algeria, Morocco's rival, have also deteriorated. So, in such a scenario, Rabat is positioning itself as a stable economic partner for the Sahel juntas. Last year, Morocco helped to mediate a diplomatic crisis, securing the release of 4 French intelligence operatives detained in Burkina Faso. This came after France recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara, a region at the center of Morocco's trade plans. The development of this strategic trade corridor between the Sahel and the Atlantic could transform the region's economics and geopolitics, positioning Morocco as a central player in Africa's next phase of integration. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching and goodbye.